Siomra beag.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Sure Look, Sure Listen, the podcast that takes a pop at culture. Sure Look, Sure Listen.
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 Sure look, sure listen. Ooh, this episode is going to really try everybody's patience. But Benjamin, sure look. This week, I'm not doing it for a whole episode. This week, Benjamin, we're taking a look at Encanto, which is a new thing from some animating studio. There's been a teaser for Sandman, released about 20 minutes after our last episode finished recording. I've watched all of Squid Game, you haven't, so I'm going to try not to spoil it for you. Then we're going to take a look at what if Ultron had actually won? Would that be any good or interesting?
Sure, listen, Michael, if that wasn't enough...
Benjamin, it isn't.
It isn't, because we do a weekly pop culture podcast.
Yeah.
We have decided to dedicate the entire month of October to Spooktober. So we'll be having spooky topics for all of October. And this very episode, Michael, the inaugural Spooktober episode, we have a guest.
A guest, is it?
A guest. It's Dr. Stephen J. Cadwell.
Oh, Ben, I had a much better... I had a much better intro set up.
Oh, no.
I'm not here. I'll go back out. I'll go out and come back in again.
Yeah, you
go back out and come back in again.
Go back out. Yes, exactly. Benjamin, in Halloween, people are often haunted by spectres of their past. Speaking of, please welcome Dr. Stephen J. Cadwell.
I think Ben's was better myself.
Oh, no.
Yes. Vindication.
For the month of Spooktober,
Sure, listen,
I'm going to side with Ben for Spooktober.
Oh no, that is spooky.
Yes. Oh, what a wonderful Halloween gift to receive. Father
Benjamin,
Halloween.
What is Dr. Stephen J. Cadwell here to talk to us about?
Sure, listen, Michael, he's here to talk to us about video games and horror, how the video game model is a better fit for the horror genre. And he's a bit of an expert in it, Michael. He's written a paper.
Oh!
Yeah. So, we're in for a treat,
In
Michael.
a book
We're in for a bloody treat.
that was sold on Amazon and in shops.
Oh no, of all places.
That's a real thing.
Ooh. Will there be a link in the spooky description?
There'll be a link to get it free on the Discord.
So spooky.
That is spooky for like sales and marketing of academic books.
Yeah, the book's like, it's like 50 quid.
Yeah,
It's 50 quid. I'll just give you the paper. It's just a doc, a Word doc. It'll be grand.
Excellent. Very good. Benjamin,
Yes.
what's happening in Encanto and what's it got to do with Spookowe'en?
Michael, Encanto is the brand new Disney-Pixar collaboration, and it's going to be a fun little adventure where a character finds themselves. They've identified a flaw, but it's not really a flaw, Michael, because they're young and impressionable, and maybe they've taken it to heart, and it's not really a thing. So they go on a little adventure, Michael, and throughout the ins and outs of that adventure, they find out, it wasn't a flaw, but a secret strength all along.
All along.
Okay.
Benjamin,
Yes.
is this a story about a superpowered family with one kind of outsider who isn't superpowered?
Yes, it's Sky High, but set in Latin America.
Or that recent one, what's it called, with all the umbrellas?
Umbrella Academy, but a bit more cheerful.
That was it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Umbrella Academy without the abusive parenting.
Not that we know of, anyway. There might be a little bit of abusive parenting.
We could be in for a real Disney Pixar shake-up here.
It could be a real twist.
Well, it's Disney Pixar, so the man will probably be dead in the first scene.
Yeah, that's true.
It looks like in this one, I don't know who the matriarch character is, but she could be an auntie or something like that.
Yes.
So it looks like the parents are pre-dead.
They're pre-dead. They've come
Pre-dead,
for
yeah.
Pixar's convenience.
It's very Pixar, isn't it?
It
It's a very Pixar-looking number.
It is, Michael. So this is another step in Pixar's world culture kind of broad spectrum of entertainment, because we've had little moments like this before. We've had Coco in Mexico. We've had Moana in the Pacific Islander region of the world. And this is a continuation of that. It's from the same producers as Moana, and it's probably, Michael, going to be another little slam dunk for representation on screen, because these films are the cultural response, Michael, to this range of films. And Stephen, sorry, I can't just say Michael today. It'll have to be Michael and Stephen.
No.
My apologies, Stephen.
You can call us
Yes.
M&S or
M&S.
S&M.
Oh, well,
M&S.
Depending if you're feeling middle class and British or kinky.
Okay, I'll see how I feel from reference to reference. So M&S,
Very good.
It's pretty interesting because these films have kind of been taken to heart by whatever community they're representing, and they're really looked upon as a really good representation of the cultural traditions of each one. And you wouldn't think that, but they're just nailing it every time, Michael. And
Benjamin,
Stephen.
when can we have one? That's what I want.
When can we have? I think we're well overdue in Irish mythology. Like, if you can do Brave with bears and bloody Bord Gosh energy lights just bouncing along the forest path, what's
No.
See, I think Brave was it. I think they gave it to us with Brave. I think they're just like, these are all ginger, so...
These are all the same. You see, you've misunderstood me, Ben. I didn't mean the Irish.
Oh.
I meant middle-class, bearded, white Irishmen who do podcasts.
Well,
When are
traditionally,
we
Michael,
specifically going to get one?
Michael, we're one of the most marginalised groups in society, so...
Very marginalised.
probably gonna do
Anytime
it
I
so.
tell people I have a podcast, they roll their eyes and go, of course you do. And that's hurtful.
Did it feel like if it was Irish that it would be a bit diddly-eye? Did it feel to you, the trailer, like if this was in Ireland, it would be set in Carols of Dublin and everyone would be puking, clouds and shamrocks and, leprechauns?
I'll do a really quick speed pitch for you, lads, on what the Irish one might be.
No, let's leave that for another day. Why don't we?
Oh.
Look, lads, listen. I haven't seen Coco, I don't think. I didn't see the one about the boy in Italy who wanted breakfast or wherever it was.
Luca.
I didn't see the one. You know that one? I was like, I want to have a breakfast. That one. I didn't see Tom Holland and Chris Pratt are brothers. I haven't seen any of those. Are they Pixar?
Onward is Onward is
Disney,
Pixar.
yeah.
Onward is I can't remember which. They've kind of amalgamated now. It's now like a Disney Pixar thing. It's a whole confusing thing, Michael. Let's not get into it. But in this particular case, the diddly eye syndrome might be there. I wouldn't know because I'm not from South America, South or Central America. I'm not sure what diddlyisms they have.
The South American equivalent of diddly eye.
Which I'm not going to hazard a guess
It's
at.
pretty interesting.
No, I'm racking my brain, but I can't think of something that is simultaneously funny enough to say, but
actual
not
racist.
insulting enough to get away with.
As you pointed out, we're three middle-aged white men, so it's not going to go well.
Speaking of old white men, the oldest, whitest man in the world has been captured in the Sandman trailer.
Yes, he has.
Buttery smooth.
We didn't get through any of the interesting stuff on Encanto.
No, it doesn't matter. We have to move on, Ben. We've got a podcast to fill. We're 10 minutes deep already.
Okay, Michael. Taking a look at we got the Sandman teaser trailer 5 minutes, as you said, after last week's episode recording. We were just like, oh, okay. I could have timed that better, lads.
Yeah.
But
Not very considerate.
yeah, we've gotten the first scene from volume 1 of the Sandman, which is Preludes and Nocturnes. And from the very first comic, we've gotten the cultists capturing Dream.
We've got the poor man's Christopher Lee, Charles Dance, and he's doing some sort of ceremony. I was a little bit surprised that they went that deep into the mythology of the comic book, to be honest, because back in the olden days when you were recommending to your non-comic book fans to read Sandman, you would often say, just go straight to the second one, you'll be grand. Yeah. But the TV show's not going straight to the second one. It's going right back to Dream being trapped in a glass box thing.
It's going to be it could potentially be incredibly intense if they stick to Preludes and Nocturnes. It might be a bit too intense for a lot of people. Like the scenes in the diner could seriously lose some of the more mainstream fans, but I don't know.
They are doing that, though. They are sticking to that because David Thewlis has been cast as John Dee.
Oh, gross John Dee in the little green coat.
Gross John Dee.
No.
Yeah, Destiny. Yeah. So he's been cast, and I think in a modern kind of TV landscape, that kind of intense horror has a lot of room. Like that's American Gothic is in right now, so hot right now.
Benjamin.
Yeah.
First of all, I think you should pronounce it intense horror. But also, do you want to fill the less up to date on Sandman listeners in on what you and Stephen are talking about with the gross and horribleness of Preludes and Nocturnes?
Yeah, so Preludes and Nocturnes is very different from the rest of the Sandman canon, and the reason for that is it was originally pitched. Say again.
I said that a minute ago.
You did indeed.
Remember I said, yeah.
So the reason for that is that originally it was pitched as a horror comic by Neil Gaiman, and he was kind of
horror comic.
Ooh.
And so the tone of those first three are very spooky. And very, very spooky.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to jump in just on our topic for today, which is horror. The introduction to that, the bound edition of Preludes and Nocturnes has a quote, and I think it's from Stephen King. I can't remember who did the introduction, and I don't have it to hand. But he said, horror should crawl into your spine and change you completely. I'm paraphrasing. And that's something that's always stuck with me, that true horror like comes into your spine and like really changes you at your very core. And the John Dee section of Preludes and Nocturnes has done that. Like I probably was too young to read it, and it has warped me ever since. And I think when we talk about, horror in more general terms later on, it's something to remember that a comic can also be a tremendous vehicle of truly, body-changing horror.
And the interesting thing is the rest of Sandman isn't really horror. It gets into weird high fantasy and tootin' mini-series of stories and all sorts of... It's all bits of everything. But that first one is very much gross and horrible horror in the vein of the likes of Miracle Man and stuff like that, like late 80s British comics where everyone was getting punched in the face and the face was exploding.
But I mean, the kind of vignette style mini story format of that is very much harkening back to like Crypt Keeper comics and like, weekly horror and those kind of traditional comics. And I think Neil Gaiman has gone on record to say that was a huge influence for the first few. But Stephen, you're bang on. There's moments in that first issue where you're just like, these are just ordinary people. This is horrific what's happening to them for no other reason than they chose to go into that diner.
There's a little frame where John Dee is sitting on the counter and he's swinging his little was it a medallion? Was it? I think it's some kind of special, and that haunts me at night when I close my eyes. That really did change me. I think it got a little bit horrific later on in the Sandman run when they did the cereal convention.
Yeah, I've got my mouth's eyes.
Yeah. Oh, and what was he? The Corinthian. He got a bit, but it never really reached that peak.
Having said that, though, as Ben said, this kind of American Gothic horror feeling is it might even come across these days as passé. What with American Gods and, there's I've seen a lot of people getting murdered in diners over the last 30 years. A lot of people getting murdered in diners. It's true. Very common. Do you remember the film Legion, where Paul Bettany was an angel? And everyone got murdered. That's the whole film. It's people getting murdered horribly in a diner. It's it's kind of it's very much it's troped its way into popular culture. Getting murdered in a diner. Yeah,
I suppose in a post-Red Wedding TV environment where we're desensitized quite a lot. Like when I read that, I was probably 94, 95, maybe 96. And I was like, Eugene Victor Toombs off the X-Files was the scariest thing.
He was coming in through the air vents. He was coming in to...
Look, his hand, his fingers grow long.
He's coming in to get you through the air vents. He's all stretchy. He's like Mr. Fantastic, but horrible. Mr. No Use, they called him. He was the opposite of Mr. Fantastic. What are we talking about? Benjamin, you were saying off air that you had a hot take on how much like Sandman the main character looks like, but then Death doesn't look anything like the character from the comic books, and you said you had some thoughts on that.
No, I didn't. You're trying to harangue me with a racist next time, Michael. Nice try. Nice try. So Tom Sturridge is looking the part from this teaser trailer. I think it's fair to say that he's got a big heaping dose of Morpheus about him.
So many cheekbones.
So many cheekbones. I think he's had extra put in to play the role.
Yeah, arguably too many cheekbones.
And the helmet looks perfect. The kind of spine helmet looks incredible. Or gas mask, sorry. It
The prop work looks to be
Yeah.
phenomenal on it, because that pan down shot or that zoom in from above, that's directly from the comic. That's a panel from the comic. You can find it. It's it's a thing, and it's spot on. So it looks like it's going to be an incredibly faithful adaptation, but for Michael, what
Yes.
you've just pointed out, in that the internet has lost its minds a little bit, because the death of this series is going to be a woman of color.
Oh, classic.
So needless to say, Michael, everybody's fine with that, and there hasn't been a blip.
Good. Well, then let's move on then. Benjamin and Stephen, B&S. Is that anything? It's probably some sort of home
BHS.
store retailer in the UK.
Can I just on that? Just I think Death looks great. I think she's going to be fantastic, and I think they could tie into her kind of, if they tied into the whole kind of Egyptian ankh wearing aspect of the Death character a bit more. And let's be honest, Death in the comics is a 15-year-old girl, which when you're 15, you're like, wow, cool. But now that you're 40, you're like, oh man, you're really not. You're being a bit creepy with Death. She's a bit too young. She's 15. Give it a break, Neil. Come on,
Neil Gaiman.
Get your act together.
Come on, young Neil Gaiman. Sort it out.
Fuck the fuck up, Neil.
But sorry.
So, speaking of ultraviolence pervading its way into culture, has anybody watched the Netflix program A Squid Game?
No.
No.
Okay. Well, it's a massive cultural phenomenon, and it's not like we have a pop culture podcast that we have to keep abreast of this sort of thing on. It's the number one show ever on Netflix. Apparently,
God.
it's just about to, or has already dethroned Bridgerton as the number one series ever on Netflix.
My goodness.
Yeah, and it's quite good. I watched all 9 episodes of it over 2 evenings. That's 4.5 hours of Squid Game per evening for 2 evenings.
That's a lot.
And I'll tell you what, lads. I've mentioned before that I am a well-travelled international man, and you know that I can speak a little bit of Korean.
You can.
I can indeed. And what I discovered from watching Squid Game in Korean with English subtitles is I can really put my finger. I've come up with a term to describe exactly how much Korean I can speak. And the amount of Korean I can speak is... That's not what he said. I don't know what he said, but that wasn't what he said. Because the subtitles are all over the place. I can't tell you in what way, but... It's. I imagine there's a lot going on, which is, and Ben, this kind of ties into what your notes are for later, but it ties into how very, very Korean a lot of it is.
Right.
And how borderline untranslatable a lot of it is. So, have you seen any of it? Because I'm going to try and avoid spoiling it for both of you.
I've seen the trailer.
I've seen
so you've
nothing.
seen the trailer.
I know nothing about it except the picture on Netflix.
Okay, it's very good, first of all. It's well worth watching. Even if you want to skip ahead, there are time codes in the description. You can skip ahead and not get Squid Game spoiled. It is very good. It's not a dystopian story at all. People are comparing it to Hunger Games a lot. It's not very Hunger Games at all, to be honest. It's much more Battle Royale.
Okay.
The Japanese film Battle Royale. And I know Hunger Games has been accused of being inspired, winky winky, by Battle Royale. Yeah, taken whole cloth or inspired. But this is much more Battle Royale in that it's set in pretty much the normal world. And there's a load of people and they're down on their luck and they've got nowhere to go and they're various schlubs and deadbeats and losers and ex-cons and whatnot. And they have all been taken away voluntarily to go play these children's games for money. And if you lose, you die. But if you win, you get the money. And every time someone dies in the game, 100 million won is added to the prize pool. How much is that? Don't know.
I'm guessing
could be loads.
I'm guessing a substantial
could
amount.
Be not very much. It's about 100,000 euro, I think.
Okay.
So every time someone dies, about 100,000 euro is added to the prize pool.
So you're not encouraged to find pals and teammates and work together.
Well, that's where society and what is society
Capitalism.
and what is friendship and what is capitalism and what is there's the relationship between older and younger people in Korea comes into play? What is the relationship between criminality and the working classes? What is the relationship between people who've had many opportunities in life and have still ended up down on their luck, and your working class schlubs? What's going on? Like, what, who's doing what, and who's friends and who's not friends, and who's enemies, and who's going to stab you when you're asleep?
It sounds fantastic. In terms of ultraviolence, how give me a splatter score out of 0 splats to red screen, 1 to 10.
It's around a 7.
Okay.
There's a lot of faces getting exploded. Probably the most common thing is it's mostly people getting shot.
Okay.
It's not people being killed in particularly gruesome and inventive ways. You're not getting a lot of severed arms, and you're just getting a lot of people very callously being shot because they didn't complete a game.
Right.
And the games are genuine childhood games. No games that we, as Irish people of our approximate generation, would really be familiar with.
Okay.
For example, they play a game called Red Light, Green Light, which is apparently where one person faces away and says red light, and then you can't move. And if you move after they say red light, you're out.
We do have an approximate.
Go on.
It's what's the time, Mr. Wolf?
What time is it, Mr. Wolf? Yeah, not what's the time, Mr. Wolf. That's the English version. What time is it, Mr. Wolf? Is the Irish version. It's similar enough to that. But I mean, that was one of the moments for me where I went, that they're not saying red light, green light. I know enough Korean to know that that's not red light, green light. So yeah, the games, they play marbles in a really weird way. Let's just say that. Nobody's
that sounds wrong.
Yeah, nobody's rolling marbles at each other. It's very strange, but it's very good. It's a little bit. If I had one criticism of it, it's that I think I would have preferred it if they didn't care who had started the games or who was behind it, or
yeah.
The bits for me where it was less gripping were in the who set all this up and what's going on the island, and I think I would have been happier if it was a more of a Cube-esque situation where they were just in it and were just following them, and that therefore made it 3 hours shorter. Let's say.
Right.
But otherwise, excellent, very good, very entertaining.
Would it be an updated version of The Running Man?
Well, it's the games are. It's The Running Man is so 80s and hyper masculine.
Okay,
and everyone's bulging and but a little old man or a canny lady can win the games in Squid Game because they're genuine childhood games that don't involve fighting a sumo ice skating Japanese man and throwing him into an electrified net.
I love your two examples of non-masculinity: a little old man or a canny lady.
She's very canny. There's a lady in it, and if you had to describe her main character trait, she's canny.
She's got a bit of cop.
I haven't just invented, though, and there is a little old man. They're actual characters from it.
What's the opposite of Arnold Schwarzenegger? A canny lady.
A little old man or a canny lady.
A lady with qualifications.
Yeah, no one gets into a fist fight with Jesse the Body Ventura and has to impale him on spikes. Let's put it that way.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. That sounds incredible. But I think I'll be watching it. I think I'll be watching it by myself.
It's very good. Do. The funny thing is, it seems to be infiltrating popular culture to the point that kids are watching it. Genuine 10-year-olds. Yeah. And hooey. I wouldn't certainly be recommending it for children, that's for sure. The violence in itself isn't actually that bad. It's the callousness of the violence. It's just you failed at the game, you're shot.
Yeah, that's hard. That can be hard to deal with when you're, particularly when you're young. The kind of the unfairness, the injustice of it all. That can leave a mark. I've noticed on the various socials that as I may mention later on, I used to teach undergraduate philosophy, and so I have a few friends who made it through the barrier from student into friend, and all of them like it, and they're all youngs. You're younger than Ben, They're all
Even
youngs
younger
and,
than Ben.
and into like, you know, TikTok and I don't know, grime. No, not grime. What's it? Crunch.
Grinder.
What's that?
The app
music
Grindr.
in England called? Not crunch.
Garage.
Grime. Is there not another one? Is there a newer one? Drill. They're all into drill. Yeah. See, I'm so young and hip. I know about that. But they like Squid Game, so that's why I thought it was more of a kind of CW romance.
No, not at all.
Plus
not at all. No,
violence thing.
it's all kind of grotty, knobbly faced, middle aged Korean people.
Oh wow!
I think
Okay.
There's only one or two sexy people in it.
I think that resonance is probably coming from two things. The unifying factor for all the characters is debt.
Yes.
So that's a huge one. The game preys on people that have a large amount of debt to pay back. And so these people aren't necessarily, it's not the same kind of moral tale that we're used to in some of these dystopian things, where this character's a dickhead because he's a snob to other people, or this character's this because he deserves his comeuppance and the game is designed around them to teach them a lesson. It's not like that. It's how much debt are you in? Oh, I'm in roughly the same amount of debt. How fun. And the other thing is, it's very closely based on, as you said, Michael, on our world.
Yeah. It's set in the real world, essentially.
Yeah, so for a lot of people,
As much as you can call Korea the real world. Take that, K-pop.
we won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But overall, I think because it's so easily equatable to our world, and younger people are probably feeling that squeeze now, what with the second massive global financial event crushing them from above. There's probably a large scale amount of resonance being like, what would I do to get rid of my debt? Ben,
is this what's wrong with you today? Because we were trying to figure out what was wrong with you, and is it because you tried to watch Squid Game and it just triggered you?
No, it's just my life. I was just like, oh yeah, I did that last week.
Oh, very good. Okay.
It's just the crushing weight of the world, Michael. It's just
it's pretty crushing. Pretty crushing.
Yeah.
If only there was a way we could build a suit of armor around the world to protect us from that crushing. That was a good segue.
That'd be dead handy, wouldn't it?
Buttery smooth.
Buttery smooth segue. Benjamin, if someone built a suit of armor around the world, there's no way that could conceivably go sideways, is there?
No, there's no way to gain sentience and then learn how to kind of skip between dimensions like some kind of Schrodinger's weapon of mass destruction.
No, Ben, it might, because that's what happened in Marvel's What If this week.
Well played, Michael.
Yes, it's not my first podcast.
Tell you. So yeah, we got the is this the penultimate? I always get that wrong.
Yes, that means second last. Yeah, penultimate.
Yes, excellent. This is the penultimate episode of bloody Marvel's What If, and it's the rise of Voltron.
Yeah.
In this particular case. So this was an interesting one for me, Michael, because it's our first kind of tie together, and it finally gives fans their little Mephisto theory for this series, which was, oh, they're all going to join together at the end. They're all going to join together at the end. And other people were like, no, it's just a fun little vignette show. Just leave it. But no, they're all going to join together at the end, Michael.
I like the way you brought your straw man back into play there, Ben. Even though your straw man neckbeards turned out to be right this time.
Yes, they were bang on, but fuck them. So,
I'm pretty sure I said they were going to blend together at the end. I might have even done it in that voice.
But anyway, what we've gotten, Michael, is confirmation that we will, in fact, have kind of an interdimensional Avengers style banding together. So we're going to see that in the next episode, hopefully. Spoilers for anyone, I suppose, from this point on who hasn't seen it this week.
Yes, because there are time codes in the description as always, so you can just skip ahead.
You can just skip ahead, lads. It's very, very handy. So what's happening in this one, Michael, is the Voltron storyline takes a little tick in the opposite direction, and Voltron gets to use the Vision body to inhabit and become kind of a god, I suppose.
Now, Benjamin.
Yes.
I know that you're saying Voltron as a joke, combining Vision and Ultron, but do you want to make that clear to people so we don't get people writing in saying that Ben pronounced it wrong for the whole episode?
Well, that's fair enough, Michael. Thanks for clearing that up. I don't really feel I have to say it now. But also, theoretically, I'm wrong.
Yes, go on.
Because it's not Vision and Ultron.
It's not Vision at all, no.
It's not Ultron. Vision at all. It's just Ultron in a Mind Stone body.
Mind Stone powered vibranium body.
Yeah, so it's really not. It's just Ultron Supreme.
God of the Boldies.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, he's no messing around, is he? He sorted Thanos out pretty rapid.
Why did they
that
do
was the
Thanos
best
like
thing.
that?
Oh, I thought it was brilliant. I was just like, yes.
Quite
He
amusing.
just wasn't ready.
It's like he walked out of the jacks and got cut in half. What?
It was class.
You remember Pulp Fiction when John Travolta gets killed? It was that scene, but with Thanos. He's just like,
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, hey,
it
what's
was
up?
100% that. What's inside him? That's what I want to know.
Jelly.
He doesn't have guts. Yeah, he seemed to be made of some sort of jelly.
I know,
Yeah.
because it cauterized just as he was falling apart. It was so hot
Oh,
that
is
it
that what it
cauterized
was?
him as he was been split in half. Lads.
Can I jump in with my hot take? You know, I told you I was
Okay.
coming in hot with my hot takes today. Black Widow and Hawkeye are the John Cena of the Marvel Universe.
Go
There,
on.
mic drop.
You can't see them.
They first of all, you can't see them because he's got his little invisible cape.
Invisible
Second of
cloak,
all,
yeah.
they're being forced down our throats so much, as in you have to like them, you have to love them. These are the heroes you care about, and I don't care about them. I can't care about them because every time they face a villain, they fight them in a cheap, dirty, underhanded way. They're sarcastic. They've no heroic qualities. I don't care about them. They're so frustrating. And the Black Widow film, I nearly put my head through a wall. It annoyed me so much. Scarlett Johansson is a fantastic actress, but she's been done dirty by this character. It's terrible. And Hawkeye, I haven't watched the trailer for the new film, for the new TV show yet, but by all things it sounds good. But my God, the two of them together are just, in wrestling terms, they're what we call a pop vacuum. They just suck the energy off the screen. Like, if you could have shown me that episode again with those bits cut out, without them in it, I would have said, that's the best 8 minutes of television I've seen in years. That's the best 8 minutes of Marvel there's ever been. But they
Two big fellas with big.
they've nothing good, they've nothing interesting. They've guns and arrows, and the arrows are boring now. It's like, oh, what arrow am I going to hit him with? An exploding arrow. Oh, what arrow am I going to hit him with? A very sharp arrow. Oh, what am I going to hit him with? A USB arrow. They are the corporate Disney-fied shades of their Marvel selves, and my hot take is boo to them too.
But Stephen, you've forgotten one thing. Is that Jeremy Renner is still under contract. And that's the greatest superpower of all.
That is, yeah. But now, maybe Florence Pugh will change the whole thing, but maybe she'll bring me around and I'll be like, yeah, she's White Widow or whoever she is now is brilliant. But
She's got sarcasm.
Yeah.
Sarcasm and guns.
Yeah, but I mean, oh God, they're flying up being chased by a million drones. And, you know, Black Widow just whips out her guns and goes, her too small, I'm guessing what, like 22mm gun, and goes, pew, 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 shoots like 8 of them in the head. And I'm like, well, you know, if I was Ultron making my, you know, clones, pack a bit of extra armor on so as a tiny bit of lead doesn't force them to blow up, even if it's a really good shot. So, hot take, boo. Hot take, boo.
And she got Hawkeye killed by shooting out Armin Zola's legs.
Why did she shoot out his legs?
He could have just flown them both out.
He could have just... Oh my god. Yeah.
Armin
that's
Zola
like-
was my favourite bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Armin Zola was good crack.
He's like, hello, welcome to my secret base. And they're like, yeah, we know. He's like,
I was in
well
the
then.
detectorists.
yes, just put me in the robot. Why don't you? He's my favourite
Okay,
character.
so we're going to move swiftly on from there. One of the things that I really liked about it is I think it finally brought the potential of Ultron to full fruition. Like, one of the great flaws of the Avengers 2 Ultron Boogaloo is he doesn't operate like a machine. He doesn't have the efficiency of a machine. He grandstands because it's, you know, an AI that's based on Tony Stark. I guess you could make the argument that he's kind of learned the art of grandstanding and egotism and narcissism from Tony Stark, and maybe that's what he's modeling himself on. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
That's my favourite thing about Ultron. My favourite thing about Ultron is that he is a bit petty and a bit childish and petulant, and he's not just a robot.
Oh, okay. Well,
he's more
wasn't
driven
for
in
me.
this one. He was more
Yeah.
in this one. I have to say, he was a much better character in this one, I thought, than in the Age of Ultron film, which I think we can all agree on was a bit pants.
go on, Michael.
I think I disagree. I think he was a much better villain, but he wasn't a much better character.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I can see your distinction there.
Like he does much cooler stuff. Like he makes himself a big suit of armor and a big cape for some reason, and the bloody
Lance.
and the lance from Ghouls and Goblins for
Yeah.
whatever reason. He's chucking that around the place, and he's chopping Thanos in half, and he's controlling the multiverse. But not a more interesting character, I didn't think, because he lost. Well, I suppose he was still a bit petty because he was like,
He is.
"I'm going to get you. I heard you. Whoever was there, I'm going to come and get you, and I'm going to break through, and I'm going to kick you in the head. Big
I
huge head."
think what I really liked about it is that machine-like efficiency comes across.
Yeah.
Go on.
Where, you know, I know some people on the internet were like, oh, Thanos could have taken Ultron. He couldn't, because Thanos doesn't compute at the level a machine does. Like, the machine would have been like, oh yeah, okay, that's a problem. Boom. Like, he assesses the threat very, very quickly, and then has that mechanic kind of response of like, I'm just going to split him in half.
Disagree.
Okay.
I don't think he assessed the threat very quickly and then split him in half like a machine. I think he just did that because he's an arsehole.
Oh,
He was
okay.
like, I've no interest in finding out who this is.
Well, I definitely felt more on Ben's side of the thing. I didn't think it was as petty, I thought it was more like, oh, here's a threat, boop, gone, game over. But that makes it a very it kind of sucks the excitement out of the scene if that's what he just does every time. So,
Yeah. Oh, here's someone.
yeah.
Choppy chop.
because he looks at the glove and he says, interesting. And then, like, he's just like, well, I can't let him use that bloody glove. And then it's like, because if
Zappity-zap.
Thanos had it clicked, he still had enough power in that glove to give Ultron an old run for his money.
Yeah.
I think he
know
would have
what I
won.
mean?
I tell you what, though, Vision's useless, isn't he? The useless fucker. Could have fucking saved the day, and he just sat around being sad all the time and going, "Oh, I've been stabbed. Oh, I'm Paul Bettany."
Well, I haven't seen the other episodes, but is Captain Marvel in every one? Is that kind of the...
No. She's in quite a few. But,
Okay.
she's not in every one.
Oh, just because
Remember,
I thought
only certain people are still under contract.
Yes.
And those are the characters you love, aren't they?
yes,
They're the characters everybody loves. I tell you what, though, Ross Marquand, he's some man for one man, isn't he?
He's single-handedly delivering the Marvel Universe.
Just get rid of everyone else and just get Ross Marquand in. He'll do you the Red Skull. He'll do you Ultron. Bet you he could have done Armin Zola.
I thought Jeffrey Wright, was brilliant
Yes,
as
Jeffrey
the
Wright.
Watcher. Oh my God. What gravitas. You could listen to him read the phone book.
One of my favorite moments is, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's just
What
like,
the bloody robots come through my sparkly mirror wall?
I really liked that it was kind of that he looked genuinely scared. And then when he put on his kind of Super Watcher armor, I was a little bit, I thought he was
I
gonna
like
be-
that.
Yeah.
He looked so dumb.
I think he looked so dumb. I
looked
think
so
that was
dumb.
the point.
Yeah, that was
like,
awesome.
That was
He's
some
like,
serious... Sorry, go
wait a
ahead.
second while I put on my dumb armor, and he goes, "Oh, I've got my dumb armor on. Stop punching me in my huge head." His head is so disproportionate. It looks so weird when he's fighting someone with a normal sized head.
Yeah. I think one of the things I really liked about that fight is its classic kind of golden age Marvel, because they even went so far as to introduce the Kirby crackle into the
There
animation.
was Kirby Crackle everywhere, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what we got was a serious like golden age fight, like the big dorky Watcher in his big armor and Ultron in his cape and his, because again that doesn't make sense with the machine theory. Like Ultron won't wear a cape; he doesn't need one. He doesn't need a cape. But that's
Or a
not the
lance.
point. Or a lance Who
From
needs a
Ghouls and
lance?
Goblins.
It was definitely from Ghouls and Goblins.
100%. But like that fight scene where they split through realities and stuff, very enjoyable. Very good action. Very good action.
Maybe when he was scouring the internet, he downloaded the ROM of the Ghouls and Goblins game for the Sega Mega Drive and said, "That is cool."
Yeah.
That's gonna
very
be
good
my
joke
look.
there, Michael. Very good.
Thank you.
That's so cool.
No, I said cool. You've just misheard me and
damn
attributed it to a joke.
Oh,
Speaking of, though, classic Mega Drive games. in the horror genre. Dr. Stephen J. Cadwell, I can't help but notice your delightful T-shirt.
Thank you.
That you're wearing for this week's episode.
Yes.
Hang on. Let me get a
Benjamin.
little screenshot of that there. Hang on, hold
Are
on.
you going to
hang
get a
on.
little screenshot? Are you?
Hang on now.
I'll have a look
Flex
at
my
that.
muscles.
Flex those muscles.
Yeah, give him a big stretch there. Oh, good man. Yeah, that's perfect.
So many muscles. Benjamin.
Yes.
Benjamin, have you ever played the video game Zombies Ate My Neighbors?
I have, Michael, because one Christmas,
Oh, here we
my
go.
grandparents gave me a SNES with a whole bunch of games, and one of those games
Super
were
Nintendo
Zombies Ate My
Entertainment
Neighbor.
System.
What a beautiful Christmas. What a joy. What a joy.
So I got my poor grandparents who weren't able to distinguish between what was suitable for a child and what wasn't. They went to like a kind of, the way we used to have Rage here that did all the vintage secondhand games and stuff like that.
We still have
Dublin.
Rage.
No, I think Rage is gone.
Is Rage gone?
Rage is
Yeah.
gone. Yeah.
R.I.P.
So
R.I.P. Rage.
yeah.
I tell you
so
what, I was down in Wexford the other day, and they have an excellent retro video gaming shop.
do they?
Yeah, it's very good.
Drop the name
that's-
there. Get a sponsor.
I can't remember. I'll look it up. I'll look it up while Ben spins his wheels. I'll look it up.
Yeah. But they gave me an SNES with 2 controllers for my brother and myself, and it was the greatest kind of mixed bag of games you've ever seen in your life. So Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Kirby, Mortal Kombat 1 and 2.
Oh
very good.
my God.
Squid Game.
There was another weird one with like a medieval like fighting game where you could play as a velociraptor or a knight, and it was so weird. There was a lot of
I think
stuff going on.
think you've combined a few different things into one there, Ben.
No, I'll
that
find
sound-
it and I'll show it
It
to you.
sounds like you're
Man.
talking about Primal Rage. Is that what that game was
Well,
called?
I think I might be. I think that's exactly what I'm talking about.
But there weren't any knights in that. There were only dinosaurs.
Only dinosaur. Okay, well I'll find it and we'll figure it out. But yeah, there were loads of different games, and among them was Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It's great.
Zombies Ate Your Neighbors. I have a similarly glorious experience with it. I was on holidays in my auntie's house in Bray in about 94, 95, so I was probably around 14, 15. And one Friday night, my parents said I could rent a Sega Mega Drive from the local independent video shop, because you could rent video game consoles back then in the 90s.
Nice.
And I rented that, and I rented It, which is a very hard film to say. The old Tim Curry version of It. So I have this. I think that's probably where my, certainly that's where my descent into madness began. Because one Friday night I watched all of It in one setting and played Zombies Ate My Neighbors for about 6-7 hours. And yeah,
Wow.
it was a glorious day. A glorious day.
Stephen, do you think that would have inspired you later to write a phenomenal essay on the topic?
I think it inspired me to write a subpar essay on the topic. So
That's true.
I'll to give a little background as to why lovely Ben and lovely Michael are saying I'm an expert on this thing. I did a PhD in philosophy in UCD, and my PhD was in aesthetics, so the philosophy of art. And when you finish your PhD, you're encouraged to go and publish. But the whole point of doing a PhD is that you have to specialize and specialize and specialize and specialize. So is that when you come out with your PhD and you try and publish, the areas in which you can publish are so small and there's so many people doing them that it's almost impossible to get published. So what happens to a lot of young researchers is they go off and they bash out a few papers and book chapters in similar areas. So computer games is something I'm very interested in. But my main interest related to my PhD was the effectiveness of art, or the effectiveness of art objects, and what kind of emotions they can bring about in people. And a video game, in my mind, is a perfect example of an art object that can bring about a particular emotion. And the particular emotion in question was horror and being afraid, fear. So not just horror, but fear and feelings of being spooked out and things like that. So I wrote this chapter for a book called Resident Evil and something.
Watch out, it's spooky games coming.
It was a book specifically about Resident Evil, and if the editor's listening, I'm sorry, but it was a very poor book. It was. It was bad, and my essay was not the best, but it was by no means the worst. And my essay is not particularly good. But what I was trying to do in the essay was compare the difference between my experience, so just my experience of playing Resident Evil 1, and my experience of watching the first Resident Evil film. And why did my experience of playing the game Resident Evil affect me and bring out such more or such a greater amount of fear than watching the film. And so this is where we got into this discussion, and I've been engaging it in a few different ways over the last few years about, are games scarier than films, or why are games scarier than films? And,
but not why are films scarier than games, I notice.
Not why are films scarier than games, because in most of my research into the topic, I found the majority of academics would agree that games are scarier than films, whereas the majority of non-academics, i.e. normal people, i.e. real human beings,
norms.
And not... No, norms meaning we're subpar.
Okay.
Let's not forget that the academic pursuit is not a healthy one.
Oh, very good.
So the real people would be like, no, I don't find games that scary. And by which, of course, I would have to say, fair enough. But if we kind of break it down in terms of an analysis, for those of you who have played Resident Evil 1, the first Resident Evil, you might...
Or Stephen,
yeah,
as it was called at the time, Resident Evil.
As it was called, it was indeed called Resident Evil. I think it had a different name in Japan as well.
Biohazard.
Yes, very good. Thank you. So it's a typical kind of haunted house scenario where you go into this big spooky old mansion and you're walking around and you're trying to find things, and there's a ticking clock which is setting up a lovely atmosphere. There's a grandfather clock that's ticking nicely in the background, and you walk through this door, and then there's what we call in the game world a cutscene. A cutscene, which is like a little tiny short animated movie, and the cutscene is a zombie feasting on a corpse, and the zombie turns around and looks at you. And so here what we're doing is we're experiencing the game as a film. The film, we have no controls. You can press all the buttons you want and nothing happens. This is just a cutscene. But then as soon as the cutscene goes, you realize you're now in charge of Chris. And if you do nothing, like when you're watching a movie, you don't physically interact with the movie. If you do nothing, Chris will get attacked by the zombie. So for most people, what happens is the zombie attacks them or they run away. And what this does is this adds a level of jeopardy to your experience where you're not just a passive viewer, you're now a passive viewer and you're engaging with the artwork as well. So when the zombie turns around to attack you, you have to decide, what do I do? Also, you have to have the dexterity and the skill to turn around on quite cumbersome controls and run away, or draw your gun and shoot him, wasting your valuable ammunition, or hit him with a stick or that you may or may not have found. So there's all these options that are presented to you. Whereas in a movie, when like in the movie Resident Evil, when you see the first zombie, they try to recreate it, but the zombie comes up and then is very quickly shot. And that was the kind of the crux of the essay, was that difference where you can run away, you can interact, you can engage, you have jeopardy, you have to do something. You have control in a game, but also then you have responsibility. As a friend of ours once said, with great power comes great responsibility.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
So yes, I thought it was Spock. So that would be the kind of the basic starting point anyway for a discussion on why games might be scarier than films.
I mean, very interesting, very strong and interesting point. And obviously as well, there's the Resident Evil's an interesting one because the first Resident Evil game is a horror game. later Resident Evil games become action games.
Absolutely.
And Chris Redfield is punching boulders in half with his bare fists. And you put the Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 6 into Resident Evil 1, he's just going to high kick his way through that mansion in 15 minutes, wiping everyone out. Not unlike a Mila Jovovich does.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the power of the protagonist kind of lessens the horror in the Resident Evil films to the point I would call them action horror films rather than horror films.
Absolutely. When you get down into it and start to examine horror movies in a real boring way, you start to realize that, first of all, not unlike our Watcher friend, horror movies splinter into a million different categories and subtypes. But an awful lot of what we would consider horror films are action movies with spooky baddies, which don't get me wrong, absolutely love them, absolutely adore them. But when you're looking for those films that actually really try to get inside your spine and corrupt your body, as we were chatting about earlier, really twist you. There's not that many. There's not that many really that do it successfully, or that do it successfully for many people. But that's not to say that horror films are bad or anything like that. But it's just the kind of emotional response that you can get from a game can be achieved a lot quicker and a lot easier, it seems, looking at the research, than in games. But I agree completely that you're in Resident Evil, the first part, you are at that stage, you're weak and vulnerable, and you'll recall the marketing described it as a survival horror game. So it's all about surviving, not chopping baddies up with your
and doing a high kick.
Yeah, no kicks and flips.
No, very, very few. As you know, Stephen and Ben, I'm a bit of a horror junkie. I consider myself to have been chasing the dragon of childhood fear for the last 30 years. Like, some stuff really seriously scared the shit out of me as a child. And I've never been able to... And I chase that. Every horror film that comes out, I think maybe this will be the one.
Maybe this is the one,
that's going to really kick in that primal shit in a brick fear that I can't find anymore. But interestingly, the difference between the horror games and horror films when I was growing up was I was terrified of films, but with games, my instinct, instead of being scared and enjoying it, was to just turn it off and not like it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And just go, this is, maybe I just won't play it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if either of you ever played the game Zero Tolerance on the Sega Mega Drive, but it was one of the first ever kind of Generation 2 first-person shooters. And it was kind of Aliens themed, but it was zombies in space.
Oh, maybe I have played that.
You probably did. You might have
seen it. I'm very
old.
But
yeah. It's your vintage, let's say. It came out probably the year after Zombies Ate My Neighbors, so you've probably seen it. But I found that unpleasant to play as a child. It made me nervous. It made me want to turn off the console and go to bed. And I misinterpreted that as a child as not liking it.
Absolutely.
Rather than embracing the fear of it. Mm-hmm. And that dawned on me when, as an adult, I played a couple of games. I played Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I don't know if either of you have ever played that. I have
thought about playing it, but I think I played a demo maybe, or I watched this a playthrough, but I didn't buy it.
I got about half an hour into it and went, this isn't good. I'm not playing this anymore.
Yeah.
And I had the same experience with Alien Isolation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I had the same experience with the Resident Evil 7 playable trailer.
Yeah.
I think it was called Resident Evil 7 The First Hour.
Okay.
And one day I had a revelation that I wasn't enjoying any of those games because they were making me feel uneasy.
Yeah.
Because they were freaking me out. Because it was an unpleasant experience. And rather than embracing that's the point, which is what I try and tell people about horror films. You know, people who just won't watch a horror film.
Absolutely.
And I tell them that's the point. The feeling that makes you not want to watch it is what you need to embrace. So then I bought Resident Evil 7, powered through that unpleasant feeling for the first hour, and holy God, one of the best horror and video game experiences I've had in the last 20 years.
Fantastic. Can I? I know I've been hogging the conversation. Sorry,
okay.
Ben. But I just want to explain. Mick perfectly there encapsulated one of my points, which makes me really happy. And to tie it back into what you were talking about last week, Ben, when you were talking about the "you go girl" or "go
for
go
her.
get him girl," go
for her.
Good for you.
Good for you, girl. Good for her. Good for her. Sorry.
Stephen, can I just point out before you go on, there is no need to feel to include Ben. You can just,
Yeah, no, there isn't really. I'm happy to
Just,
sit back. You are the guest for this week.
just
so it's totally
pretend he's
fine.
not there. We'll just have a chat about horror games.
But the in the literature, so this is going back to Aristotle's Poetics, the distinction that you're describing there, Mick, between the feeling you have when you watch a horror film and the feeling you have when you play it, or you had when you played a horror game, is the distinction between the effects of catharsis and the effects of mimesis or mimesis. So generally, as Ben eloquently described last week, when you're watching a movie with horror or violence or tragedy or any of these kind of strong emotions, you go through a cathartic experience where you identify with the context and the motivations of the characters, and you are happy to see the villain get their comeuppance, or you're happy to see, Laurie Strode push Michael Myers out the window, or, you're happy for that thing to happen. It gives you maybe not even happy. You're relieved. There's a release of emotion. There's some kind of endorphin rush or something that gives you a feeling where you can come away from that movie and say, that was a cathartic experience. I enjoyed that experience. Even though I was scared, even though it was negative, I enjoyed that experience. Whereas with games, it's not about catharsis. It's really important that it's not about catharsis. It's about mimesis. In a good horror game, I should always clarify this by saying good, because there are many crappy ones that don't know what they're doing. But
boogly woogly.
Yeah, in a good horror game, you should feel that you are in danger. You're not identifying with somebody else. So when Chris is getting attacked by a zombie, you shouldn't feel, oh no, Chris is in danger. You should feel, oh fuck, I'm about to get killed. So
and just turn the machine off.
Yeah, so when you karate chop your controller and throw it on the floor, and the person in the next room comes in and says, Mick, what are you doing to that expensive controller that I bought there for you the other day and that? And you say,
Are you
invited
married
my
to
mum?
Bridget from The Quiet Man?
Who invited my mum here?
you say, Ma, I died. I was eaten by a zombie. You don't say, no sane person would ever say, Ma, Chris Redfield was eaten by a zombie and I was responsible for his actions. So,
His blood is on my hands, mother.
but this is the thing. It's not even Chris's blood. It's your blood. You're like, I am losing my blood. And Resident Evil, again, emphasizes this by when you die. Can you recall, Mick, what it says on the screen?
You died.
You died. Not Chris. Not Mario. You. When you're playing Super Mario World and you fall into a hole, Mario didn't fall into a hole. You fell into a hole. So this is why it's the difference between catharsis and mimesis. Mimesis, it has many different definitions, but in Aristotle's Poetics, he talks about it as you see yourself in the tragedy. You don't see the tragedy happening to someone else and you empathize with them in a cathartic way. You actually see yourself in representation. So it's miming you. There's a mimetic connection with you. So that is what I would say is a big issue with video games and the frustration that comes with them. Because the jeopardy is there, you also have responsibility. And if you reject that responsibility, it can turn into frustration. And you just go, actually, no, F this, I don't want to play these games anymore. And just put the control down. Which you don't really do in a movie. Like, if a movie gets too scary, you can't turn it off.
Who turn a scary movie off.
Pardon?
I know some people who'll turn a scary movie off.
Yeah. But is that what they're doing? What they might be doing there is they're turning off the whole situation. They're disengaging completely. Whereas because a game can take you, 30, 40 hours, sometimes you might just end that session and know you will go back to it eventually. So in a lot of ways, horror games could be probably better associated sometimes with horror novels or horror comics, where you're investing a huge amount of time into them. But that idea of mimesis and having the kind of the mimetic effect of a video game can also be frustrating. But when you get it right, when it works, not only did you save Chris's life, you saved your life. When in Last of Us 2, when you kill the Rat King and you are finally free to move on to the next section of unrelenting horror, the relief that you feel is palpable. I'm sure anyone listening who's played The Last of Us 2 and killed the Rat King, probably they did the same thing as me, which is at the end they just walked around, maybe shot the body a few times, and just walked around the horrible burnt out hospital and was just breathing to themselves, going, I did it,
I'm free.
Yeah.
The funny thing about video games is, and this is an anecdote as much as it is a point, but the funny thing about video games is you need to know the language of video games, I feel. Although, no, hold on, I'm about to contradict myself. So, you need to know the language of video games to be properly scared by a video game. And I was going to say that's in opposition to film, but I think it's just we know the language of film so well because it is so ingrained in us culturally, and not everyone is as familiar with the language of video games. So our friend Shane, our mutual friend Shane, you might remember him. He's been on a few of the podcast episodes. He's a real son of a bitch.
I'm a big fan.
He's completely immune to horror video games. Not from a tough guy perspective, but he just, it's not like, I mean, if you put him in a spooky field at night and had people like jumping at him with knives, he'd be terrified. But in a video game, he doesn't do the thing that Dr. Stephen J. Cadwell has just so eloquently described of relating that character on screen. It's not him.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with him. It's just a character on a screen with spooky music. And he's like, so I don't know if you ever played Slender.
Yes.
It was a kind of homebrew, very small homebrew. There are lots of Slender Man games now, but this was like basically a first-person demo called Slender. Go and find the 8 pages or whatever before Slender Man gets you. Yeah. And it absolutely scared the piss out of me. It scared the piss out of our good friend Dr. Jim, who you also both know. Oh, yeah. Scared the piss out of both of us. We played it independently each other, scared the piss out of it. Played it together, scared us even more because we were egging each other on. Invited our friend Shane to play the scariest video game either of us have ever played. Complete deadpan. And not, like I said, from a tough guy perspective, and not from a like, this isn't going to affect me sort of way, but just genuine confusion on his face as to what could have possibly been scary. He was just like, I don't get it. What is scary about this?
That's wonderful.
Then he punched it because he didn't understand it.
I might get Shane. To go to UCD psychology department. There's a wonderful doctor out there called Dr. Brendan Rooney who studies a lot of these things, and he might strap Shane up to a few machines and get him to play some scary games. Oh,
that would be incredible! I'm sure he would be up for it.
It'd be
if nothing else comes out of this episode except that experiment, this will be worth it.
I'll send this link to Dr. Brendan and see what he see what
Very
he says.
Good.
But I think on your point there, Nick, I think that's a great thing to say about the vocabulary of the game and the vocabulary of the film. And if you think of some of the scariest moments in horror cinema, quite often will have a kind of an educational component to it. Like I'm thinking of the blood test scene from John Carpenter's The Thing, where they say basically, I'm going to heat up this wire and I'm going to stick it in Petri dishes with all of our blood, and whoever's blood has the thing in it will react. Like, that's how the scene begins. So as then, with everyone tied up and the flamethrower, and it's a really slow scene, because what they're doing is they're just teaching you to build up, and you're just getting more and more engaged with the vocabulary of what's going on, because you know full well all that has to happen is the picture of that little stick has to hit the picture of that little blood, and something terrible is going to happen. So I think you're absolutely right that you need to know the vocabulary, and sometimes as well, not knowing the vocabulary, not knowing what button to press. How do I turn around? How do I run? How do I pull my gun? You know, that can actually make early stages of horror games even more scary.
Yeah. I mean, but the other thing about like the vocabulary of horror films, anyone who watches horror films knows, oh, that shot's framed weirdly. That shot is framed so that there's about the right amount of space right there behind Stephen's shoulder for someone to appear. And then, it's a spooky man! But his head's on backwards and there's another head coming out the back of it. Wah!
Bloody malignant.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Thanks for saving me €11.
You're welcome. But that kind of shorthand, that cinematic shorthand of there's a funny space here. Some people are consciously aware of it. Some people are not consciously aware of it. They're subconsciously aware of it, and that makes a scene, an oddly framed scene, tense to the point that a lot of modern cinema plays on that knowledge and shows us an oddly framed scene, and then doesn't have a boogly woogly jump out and frighten you. Yeah. And then the next scene, when you relax, that's when they get you.
Yeah, exactly.
But video games have their own version of that. And I'm thinking specifically, because we're kind of leaning on Resident Evil 1, which was probably the master of introducing jump scares to video games. But if you see a long corridor in Resident Evil, there's just a long corridor and there's no zombies in it.
Yeah, with three windows.
And there's 3 windows on the side, and there's a mysterious kind of leak on the roof, and you're going, I'm not going down there.
Yeah.
Give me a corridor with 3 zombies in it any day of the week.
Yeah.
Because something's going to happen here. Dogs are going to come through the window. Arms are going to grab me. Something's going to come through the ceiling. A big tentacle might come out of the floor and go, anything. Anything could happen. But if you don't know that, you're just going to go, oh, cool, empty corridor.
What's wonderful as well is this vocabulary, as you say, now they're playing with that knowledge. So I've mentioned it a few times now, but it's because I think it's such a perfect example. The first game of the Last of Us, just The Last of Us, the opening 30 minutes of that, or 20 minutes, are breathtaking. They're astonishing. But it cuts between very long cutscenes and short scenes of action where you have limited control. So you're in a car and all you can do is look around, or there's another cutscene and then you have to run. And can I give spoilers for this game that's been out for 10 years?
Yeah,
it's the first one, isn't it?
The very first one, and
retroactively retitled The Last of Us 4: A New Hope.
yeah, exactly.
Joke for you
so
there.
Old Ben is running through. So it's the zombie apocalypse, and you're running through with your daughter, and you finally managed to escape the town, and you're walking up, and you've got these controls, and you're running up, and then this army guy stops you, and your control is taken. It cuts to a cutscene, and the army guy kills your daughter.
Oh, no use.
No, so that's how the game starts. That's what it's telling you that you're in for. It's like, we're going to mess with your feeling of control, your feeling of power, your feeling of responsibility. And then the next 2 games and the subsequent TV series are all going to rely on, do you care about the fact that your daughter died or not? Because that's the crux of the whole story. And the Last of Us and Last of Us 2, I would say, are better than any horror movie, better than any TV show, better than any novel. They are the epitome of apocalypse horror. There's nothing is ever going to come close to them, which is why I'm both excited and terrified of this new TV show.
Except The Road.
Oh, far better than The Road.
Better than The Road.
Far better than The Road. I mean, it takes what The Road does and does it better. Absolutely. I know I'll be kicked out of the Academia Club for saying that, but fuck them.
They'll send Viggo Mortensen over to beat you up.
I to defend Last of Us. This is a hot take. Here's my hot take. Viggo Mortensen, you come to Dublin and I'll fight you. I'll fight you, Viggo Mortensen. I'll fight you.
Our podcast has turned into a bloody fight.
In the left corner, representing the Last of Us video game for some reason, it's Dr. Stephen J. Cadwell, and in the right corner, befuddled by this whole thing, is a drugged and kidnapped Viggo Mortensen.
Who, by all accounts, seems to be a very chill and very nice guy.
Yeah, seems like a nice man.
Very nice man.
Yeah, very nice man. Sorry, Viggo. Don't know why we dragged you into this.
On the bright side, when I hit him, it probably won't hurt. It'll just be a soft padding, like Mr. Burns.
Let's, for the sake of wrapping it up, just tell the listeners, yes, we have played Silent Hill.
Oh,
we can't talk about everything. We can't talk about everything on one podcast.
But Silent Hill, Silent Hill is a less interesting example because the film version is actually okay. Whereas the film version of Resident Evil really does fall flat. It's just an action film with some zombies.
What do you mean? You don't love overly CGI'd characters just throwing themselves at each other? What do you mean?
But how many Mila Jovoviches are there this time? You never know.
Can I just throw one more point in there just to finish off?
Yes, go on.
For those of you who might be interested in this topic, I would say a game, Hideo Kojima, who's the kind of the current, I don't know, Elvis of games. I don't know why I said Elvis. The king of video games. His most recent game, Death Stranding, takes everything I said and throws it out the window. It manages to do horror in a totally new and different way. But I'm only about a third of the way through Death Stranding because I'm old and have kids and I can't play very often. So maybe in a year or two.
That's the real horror.
Yeah. Parental responsibility. But yeah, the Death Stranding is an incredible game. I 100% recommend it, but it will mess with your mind in a million different ways that we haven't discussed today. And one other thing, just to say, there's two games called Dark Side Detective, which are spooky games. They're not horror. They're point and click adventures, and they're Irish. And I don't like to be all national about it, but just in case anyone is listening and they like spooky games like Costume Quest or Luigi's Mansion, go onto your computer or console of choice and buy Dark Side Detective and Dark Side Detective 2, A Fumble in the Dark. They're hilarious and wonderful, and they're not scary at all, but they've got Cthulhu and zombies and monsters and gremlins and a trip to Ireland in them. And
that sounds fun.
Am
I getting those on Steam?
You can get them on Steam. I believe you can get them both now for I think they're like $9.99 or $11.99. But you'd be supporting
Let's play.
You'd be supporting, You'd be supporting the independent games industry. You'd be supporting the Irish games industry, which is still struggling to get off the ground, but it's doing very well. And you'd be supporting awesome, cool horror games. And this is, I have no connection to them. I don't know anyone involved, but Dark Side Detective and Dark Side Detective 2, A Fumble in the Dark, are my 100% million times recommendations for cool spooky games for Spooktober.
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, Ben.
Yes.
Point and click games are not a good idea for a Let's Play because they're usually quite funny, and then you have us being less funny talking over the funny. And everyone's like, this would be great if these two idiots didn't keep preempting all the jokes with worse versions.
And a lot of it is trying to connect. Put this spanner on this lampshade. Put this spanner on this bed. Put this spanner on this wardrobe. You've unlocked the wardrobe.
Hooray!
Yay.
So
all right, well, we won't Let's Play it then, but I'm going to check it out.
Absolutely do. Dark Side Detective and Dark Side Detective 2, A Fumble in the Dark.
Ladies and gentlemen, what are some of your formative gaming experiences with horror and spooky, scary skeletons sending shivers up your spine, shivers inside your spine if you go off the earlier comments in this episode? Let us know what you think. You can talk to us in a bunch of different ways and give us your thoughts on horror and video games. You can find us on the interwebs at www.seomrabeag.com, SEOMORABEAG.com.
It means tiny room in Irish.
Does indeed. You can also find us on the gram at Sure Look, Sure Listen Podcast. My brain's not working.
Yes,
brain's not working. Sure, look. I'm all scared and spooked. You can find us in lots of different ways. We're also on Twitter at ListenSure. But the best way
What is the best way?
to get in touch with us and to get
Yes.
a live response
Sometimes.
sometimes is to get up on that Discord, baby.
Hop up on it.
Absolutely.
I've hopped up on the Discord. Me and all the
He's up there.
other Mick and Benders. We're chatting away. Me and the Mick and Benders chat all day about
That is
class.
horror movie
That's very
crap.
good. Yeah, that's very good.
That's class.
Stephen, do you want to do any shout outs before we finish up?
Yes. Any shout outs to the fans?
Shout outs to the fans, to all my. Oh, sorry. Yes, there is a shout out I wanted to shout out. Thank you. If they've listened this far, you nerds. I'd like to say hello to the aesthetics philosophy class 5200 from Heidelberg University. You nerds listening in on your free time and studying. You nerds.
Very good. Let's stick it to them.
Thank you for listening. See you soon, Heidelberg University people.
This particular Mick and Ben would like to say a very, very massive thank you to Dr. Stephen J. Cadwell for coming on and telling us all about horror and video games. Very informative.
Thank
very
you so
useful.
much. Thank you for having me.
And very spooky.
Oh,
we really
thank
appreciate
you. I hope I don't
Continuing
die now.
Ooh, I suppose we all will eventually. That's the real horror.
Ladies and gentlemen, if that long-term horror isn't enough for you, you can join us in a week's time where we'll be taking a look at urban horror, hell and the inner city, focusing on films like Candyman, Bloody Pinhead, and all the other nasty things that came along with different films. So get
Adam and Paul.
Oh, that's Dublin horror. That's a very different thing. All right, lads, that's the end of us. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Ooh. I was a ghost the whole time.
I'm
Made
not
no
wiping
difference.
myself with a Tato bag. It's a quote from Adam and Paul.